So hi Neil, we're here to talk about the ConTech API series, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
But before we do, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Clive Snell, I'm the CEO of ConTech Live. ConTech Live is a series of conferences. We sit very firmly on the intersection of content and technology and a bit of chaos. We're working on our fifth main event, which is going to be in November in London and online. And we think there are some fantastic challenges and fantastic opportunities with the way tech is really changing things in the scholarly, professional, and information marketplace. Before I go any further into what we're going to talk about, let me just introduce you to Neil. Neil, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Neil. Hello. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, what about myself? I'm the head of publisher relations at Knowledge Unleashed. And prior to that, I have like a 20 plus some year career in our scholarly industry, working different types of positions at biz dev, sales, editorial, with a number of different publishers: Monscart, Blackwell, Wiley, Nature Publishing Group, University of California Press, and then into technology with an organization called Unsilo, which became Cactus Communications, and then later I joined Research Square Company, and then now most recently I'm with Knowledge Unleashed. So just 20 years of a lot of input from different areas of our industry, and sort of through what I think is sort of an interesting evolution or evolutionary time, right? There's so many things that have happened in those 20 years that I think have affected some of my interest in today's topic.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Neil. Just to underline how global this industry is, I'm just outside London and it's kind of just early afternoon. And Neil is somewhere else, and God bless him, it's just past 6 a.m. so here we go. Anyway, we're very excited to talk about the ConTech API series. We're going to embark upon a journey. We're going to look very closely at these things called APIs. What are they? How are they used? Where they're needed? Their value? The challenges? And this event series, which we hope to run in the months to come, has come about in a particularly unique way. So I'm going to pass to Neil the question: how did this all come about? Tell me how we got to this point.
Okay, so of course there's a long version of this, and then there's a very short version, and there's something in between, and we'll see how I go. But I think it started with me. I was preparing a talk on some aspect of innovation in scholarly publishing, and then I was poking around and became very interested in sort of exchange of information. Like, we think about it, that's what the scholarly industry is really about: exchanging information, filtering information. Right? It's always been like that. It will always be like that. But the complexity and the amount of work that goes into that, right, is almost like exponential. And that made me sort of think about the relationships of content with content and with people, and how does it actually work. And this thing came to mind where I started thinking about the relationships of, sharks and pilotfish or remoras, how they, these things that hang on to this main object, right? But there's something symbiotic there. They also serve a purpose. They clean the shark, they make the shark functional, and so on. And I started thinking, well, when we look at an article, a lot of what goes on in an article today is, in terms of its relevance, how it functions, how it interacts with the world, isn't necessarily defined by the article itself, but by just this ever increasing amounts of services that sit within it, around it, that it links out to, that link into it. and where a lot of that content, you could almost say it's almost irrelevant if it doesn't have all those connections flowing in and out, right? And this maybe also goes back to the production of the research, not just reading it and engaging with it. And I thought, this is interesting. And so so then some late evening, I just posted on LinkedIn, and I said, I just got curious about the topic, and I posted a poll just asking others if they felt similarly, and whether this maybe deserved an event around APIs in the scholarly industry. And you know how it goes with LinkedIn posts. Sometimes you don't hear anything from them, and then in this case, a lot of people came out and said, yes, there should be some type of event. This is very important. And then from that, there was a working group of people, including yourself and Kat, right, that came together in a couple of calls, like 30-some plus people from all walks of life in the scholarly space, to discuss the ideas of what could be done in an event on APIs. And that turned into the idea of maybe a series, because there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
That it can't be done with one event.
Yeah, so I think it was really interesting the way it came about. I'm fascinated by that. We spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. We use it a lot. We've got a lot of followers on LinkedIn now. And it was really, I thought it was very exciting to see the way that everyone sort of gathered around and said, hey, yeah, this is a really good idea. And hopefully we can pump the tire on that and keep it turning. And now we should talk about, well, what is it going to look like? We'll start by talking about, what do you think are the main aims of the API series? What would you like to see come out of it?
Yeah, it's something we discussed quite a lot in the working group, and maybe it's still being defined. You probably have some thoughts about this too,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I would like to see like a series where you have, maybe different events that are of more interest to some people than they are to others, or maybe they're equally interesting to everyone. But what we found in discussion in the working group was, as I said, there was so much to unpack that it was difficult to make maybe one event, unless it was like a face-to-face event over multiple days that has something in it for everyone, right? This is the space where you can have sales, business, product, marketing, executive leadership. You're going to have people from the library space. You can have researchers. You can have people from the technology space. You can have people that are very sort of niche oriented in the scholarly space come together to figure out, well, how does it work with exchanging information in the scholarly space? And what are the use cases, the business cases around that? You could look at, well, practically, how does it work? What are these APIs?
Yeah,
I'm interested in APIs, but this is just very sort of abstract for me. How does it work? Can I tinker with this myself, right? So there could be like practical sessions, there could be high-level sessions, there could be use case sessions, and there could be sessions that are really focused on just one of those groups because they want to discuss something of a particular interest to them. So I think that's where we sort of decided on. This needs to be a series of types of events where people can engage as they like. I think
for my sort of limited experience, people seem to say, and then there's an API for that, and then there's an API for that, and I think what we're trying to do with this is to dig into that. So what does that really mean? What is that? How does that actually work? If I understood that better, would I be able to do my job better? If I understood that better, would I be able to improve the way the API works? I mean, for me, that's one of the levels that we will be aiming at.
Exactly, and I think I mean, you say something interesting there. With there's an API for that, right? Because that's something I think we've also noticed, right? That it's easy for organizations nowadays to say, oh well, we have an API for that, right? If you want access to some of our data within certain limitations or no limitations, right? Here's where you can plug into.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think what we all forget is that, yeah, okay, that's great. But as an industry, we become very good at saying, well, here's our API, go knock yourselves out with that.
Yeah.
But we forget how difficult it can be to integrate APIs, right?
Yeah.
Into user experiences, into the UIs of the things that we build. And I think this is where maybe we need like a broader conversation about, it's not just about pumping information out, it's also about being able to take information in.
Yeah.
And say, not just there's an API for that, there's an API integration for that, because
exactly.
Right?
Oh yeah. Well, I think we're going to start with that with the event in a few weeks' time. We'll come to that in a moment. But I think that's really fascinating. What kind of people are we aiming at? What kind of which kind of job titles, which kind of functions do we expect to be participating in this arena?
It's a good question. Which kind of people? Well, if we look at the working group that came together, it's all over the map, right? And I'm just remembering sort of the top of my head, right? We have like there are librarians, there are some consultants in the scholarly space, technology consultants. There are sort of academic researcher, startup founders.
Yeah.
There are technologists in the institutional space, libraries.
I think production people as well. You could get
production user experience, biz dev people. People with innovation titles. Different levels of leadership in the scholarly industry, like people who see a role and value of APIs. I don't think there's any limitation, right? I think this should be of interest to anyone in our wider industry. I struggle a bit with it because it's something we discuss a lot in the working group, and it was maybe difficult to say these are the 3 or 4 or 5 people, because all we had to do was take a look at, well, who's in our call today, right?
And it was everybody,
everyone was there, right? So obviously it had interest to people from all sorts of areas.
Well, I think that from a ConTech perspective, I think that really resonates with us. That these bits of tech are making huge strides and potentially getting in the way, and there's all that, and so it does concern many people, I think. And as conference or webinar or online event organizers, we always get asked, so what am I going to get out of this? So what are our attendees? What are the people that we're going to put in this virtual room or real room, hopefully down the line? What do you think they get out of the API series? It's always a tough question, but that's what we're here for.
I think we're all going to learn from it. I'm looking forward because I'm going to learn from it, right? And I think I'm going to come out on the other side with a different perspective than what I had when I came in. We all work differently. But what excites me about working in our industry are typically like the moments or the times of my career where I learn new stuff, or I learn to look at things through a different lens, right? And that impacts how my career shapes, or how I go about my work, how I spot opportunities. And then I also think, it's a bit back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? Really, what is this about? It's about exchanging information. And it's very difficult to imagine a future in scholarly publishing or information services without increased complexity in terms of exchanging information and increased information, right? and it's almost impossible to imagine how you are going to go about this, regardless of which function you're in, without more sort of automated exchange of information between
Absolutely.
different actors in this ecosystem, right?
Absolutely.
Impossible. It doesn't matter if you're in production or marketing or sales or whatever.
Sure. So just to future focus a bit for our audience, we're going to kick everything off in a few weeks' time with an online event, a panel discussion. We'll talk about that again in a minute. I promise we will. But I know the working group has some really good discussions around the types of activities, the types of events that could fit down the line, once we start to build some momentum. Do you want to just talk to that for a minute or two?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a difficult one to unpick in the working group, because as we just talked about, there are so many folks in that group that were coming from sort of added from different perspectives. And so the general consensus at the end, or the most recent meeting before we kicked off, was to start off with sort of a higher level event on sort of the value and the impact of APIs on our industry. And then followed by sort of an API 101, where we get some help, hopefully, from a partner, in this case, potentially Postman. We're going to come in and help facilitate sort of a 101 learning workshop where people without any type of coding ability are able to dip their toes and see, if you do this, then this happens. And that will be an introduction to a potential Explorathon. So you could think hackathon, but maybe with less hack in it, but more like a facilitated event where people get to play around with some of these things together with other people, to explore sort of some of the opportunities and some of the difficulties in making data and information speak together.
I think that's a great summation of the kind of discussions. Again, got us very excited. I mean, Kat and I, as you know, have been doing events for a mighty long time.
Yeah.
And I was very, very enthusiastic anyway. But as soon as I thought I can get involved in running an Explorathon, that's brand new. I need to do that. so hopefully down the line we'll engage with something like that. I think it's a great idea.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's at the end of that, right, there's an opportunity to add all sorts of more like distinct like webinars that are maybe more like focused on a particular use case or on particular issues around APIs that are maybe more focused on specific target audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've already kind of covered a lot of this, but I'm just keen to just circle back on your personal perspective on the API world, how important they are, and how you see the future. What hopes do you have for them? What fears do you have for them? In just in a very short summary.
Yeah, I think I may have talked a bit about it in the beginning, but I mean, to me, it's. I wonder if a time will come, maybe it's partially already here, but where like the content, the information that as humans that we produce and that we digest, right? Traditionally, not that many years ago, right, when I started in publishing, everything was sort of fairly like rudimentary when we look back, right? There's an article was an article, right? And you had like references at the back, right? And when it became really fancy, right, those references started linking out from the HTML article, and then things like Crossref came around and things could link together, right? And another thing that was, I think, interesting to notice back then was, we looked at like author guidelines. They could fit on one page 20 years ago. And now they're like 10, 20 pages. They're insane, right? So the complexity of the research enterprise, it has just it's grown, right? And it affects everyone, authors, readers, and of course everyone who works in the industry sort of as intermediaries, bringing things from authors to readers and back and forth. And what's becoming, at least to me, clearer, or maybe this is just me seeing things differently, is I wonder if we're headed to a point where the value of all these things that support the article, that link into it, that link out from it, that connect it to other parts of this ecosystem, are becoming more valuable than the article itself, right? If you don't have those components and the article isn't able to speak to the world, how relevant is it, right? No one's going to find it. No, and I just wonder then if the future of APIs sort of lie in, that information or data exchange in and out of maybe something like articles, then maybe this is becoming more important in a perverse way than the content itself, right? That the content almost isn't relevant unless it's connected to the wider world, because there's so much information, there's so much complexity, that they become isolated little islands on their own unless there's some type of connection.
I totally agree with that. We had a ConTech Farmer event a couple of months ago, and there was a lot of talk there around, very specifically, science and research shifting from narrative to data. And the API sort of sits right in the middle of that, and you've just talked about it. And that is a big ConTech issue, and that's a big issue, I think, for this group as well, which is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. But we can't fix it today. We haven't got time.
No. All we can do is become more interested in it.
Absolutely. So our series starts. We'll finally get to it. Our series starts with an online event 3 weeks tomorrow. That's the 9th of June. That's at 3 p.m. BST, British Summer Time. And we've already got a really good audience signed up for that. But if anyone out there hasn't actually signed up yet, just go to our website, contech.live, and you'll find everything you need to do to sign up, to register. And it's a 1 hour online only event. And we've got a nice panel to discuss things. Neil, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the event that we're calling Scholarly APIs, Current and Future Value?
What can I say about it? I mean, I think it's a great intro event to anyone who's now interested, and they have an hour to spare of their time to come along and hear people in different areas, startups, libraries, publishing organizations, reflect a bit on the value and need for scholarly APIs, right, from sort of different perspectives, and hopefully coming out of that event, you will then have a different appetite for, hey, what is this topic actually, right? And how does it relate to what I do or what my interests are? And hopefully it'll give you some appetite to join some of the later events too. So think of it sort of like as a high level overview icebreaker to sort of introduce the need and value of APIs.
Yeah, I think it's a very good definition. We've got a fantastic panel of 5 people who are really at the heart of a lot of this stuff. And of course, there will be an opportunity for Q&A moderated, and obviously we'll be quite keen to do more and more follow-ups from that. Just to remind everybody, 9th of June, 3 p.m, contech.live for the sign up. We're really looking forward to this. Neil, thank you so much for being the prime mover, the instigator, whatever, I'm not sure the shepherd we started in starting to make this work. As I say, we think we're very much at the beginning of this journey. We're very excited to be involved, and I would reach out to anyone who's tuning into this if they want to get more involved with anything that we've talked about today. Again, to make contact via our website. Neil, is there anything else you would like to add to our potential audience out there right now?
Well, one thing I'd like to add is, of course, thank everyone in the working group who came together. So I printed out because I just want to give some credit to these folks that came together and actually made this happen. Right? This isn't my idea. It's a collective idea, right?
The floor is yours, absolutely.
Exactly. So there's and in no sequence of importance, but Tony Alves, Lisa Hinchcliffe, Anita Pendrowski, Matthew Buys, Zach Chandler, Andrea Chiarelli, Darrell Gunther, Jennifer Kemp, Heather Katula, Michael Ma, Lindsay Miller, Josh Nicholson, Jay Patel, yourself, Clive, Josephine Weisflog, Richard Wynn, Kat, your colleague from ConTech, Chris Hare, Claire Froelich from Postman, Helen King, Paul Gabino, Phil Bogdan, Shavi Shahan, who's going to actually chair the session in 3 weeks, Mary Glaska, Henrik Bang, Martin Rolands, Adam Hyde, Varsha Kodiar, Smith Patel, and Michaela Atherley. This was the group that really defined much of this. And actually, I mean, we have a long document that created a manifesto almost like for what we're trying to do. And none of this would have happened without their sort of enthusiasm and engagement on this topic.
I completely echo that. And none of those would have come together without your enthusiasm to make it work as well. So we're really looking forward to this. I mean, it is a great opportunity to get people engaged with the manifesto. And, we want as many people as possible to join us on that June the 9th date. We really, really look forward to staging. Well, of course, it's a free to attend event, just to underline that, forgot that. Go sign up. We will see you hopefully all on June the 9th. We are beyond thanks with Neil. He's a great guy. We're really looking forward to working with him on this series. And for now, we draw a line on that. Thanks for viewing, and we'll see you all soon.